The sun hung low over the sprawling backyard of my childhood home in Evanston, a quiet Chicago suburb where oak trees lined the streets and neighbors still waved from their porches. It was the annual Carter family reunion, a tradition my mother, Diane, clung to like a lifeline. Despite the cracks in our family's foundation, the air buzzed with laughter, the clink of beer bottles, and the smoky aroma of my dad's famous ribs on the grill. At 24, Mia Carter, stood on the edge of the chaos, clutching a glass of iced tea, my corporate casual blouse sticking to my skin in the summer heat. I'd driven up from my downtown Chicago apartment, where I worked as a junior marketing analyst, a job that gave me flexibility but demanded late nights to meet client deadlines. This reunion was supposed to be a day of nostalgia, a chance to reconnect with cousins, aunts, and uncles. But for me, it was a tightrope walk. My ex-boyfriend, Ethan Marshall, was here. Ethan, 32, wasn't family, but he might as well have been back when we were together. His presence today was no accident. My cousin Ryan, his old college buddy, had invited him, oblivious to the history that made my stomach churn. I hadn't seen Ethan in months, not since our messy breakup, but the sight of him across the yard, laughing with Ryan near the cornhole boards, sent a jolt through me. His sandy hair was shorter, his frame leaner, but that cocky grin was unmistakable. I turned away, pretending to fuss with the picnic table's checkered cloth. But my mind spiraled back to how we'd ended up here. 4 years ago, Ethan and I met at a cozy bookstore in Wicker Park, both of us moonlighting to make ends meet. I was a college sophomore, juggling classes and bills, determined to graduate debt-free. Ethan, a graduate student pursuing a master's in urban planning, was drowning in student loans and family baggage. His parents were a financial mess. His mother's shopping sprees and his father's failed real estate ventures had drained their savings, leaving Ethan to fend for himself over late-night shifts restocking shelves. We bonded over our dysfunctional families. Mine was a tangle of unspoken grudges, my mom's perfectionism clashing with my dad's laid-back chaos, my older sister's resentment over being the responsible one. Ethan's was a soap opera of bad decisions, with parents who leaned on him for bailouts. Those shared vulnerabilities turned into coffee dates, then stolen kisses in the bookstore's back room, and, eventually, love, or so I thought. 2 years into our relationship, I graduated and landed my marketing job. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid enough for a 1-bedroom apartment downtown. Ethan, still struggling with loans and a low-paying job as a construction foreman, was stuck living with his parents in a cramped condo. I offered to let him move in with me, a decision born of love and naivety. The rent was steep for a new grad, so I covered 70% of it, reasoning his debt was a heavier burden. He promised to pay me back when things got better. We split utilities evenly, but the household chores, those fell squarely on me. Ethan's job was grueling long hours on noisy construction sites, leaving him too exhausted to help with dishes, laundry, or even sweeping the floors. I didn't mind at first. I loved cooking for us, turning our tiny kitchen into a haven with pasta dishes and homemade desserts. I'd fold his work shirts, scrub the bathroom, and lug the trash to the curb, telling myself it was temporary. But I asked him to handle one task, taking out the recycling. It was a small request, something he could do on his way out since he left later than me. He agreed. But week after week, the blue bins piled up by the door. I forgot, he'd mumble, and I'd sigh, dragging them out myself before my morning commute. The tension built slowly, like water pooling behind a dam. I'd come home from late nights at the office, my eyes burning from staring at spreadsheets, only to find dishes in the sink, laundry overflowing, and Ethan sprawled on the couch with a beer, engrossed in a Cubs game. I'd bite my tongue, not wanting to nag, but resentment simmered. I wasn't just his girlfriend. I was his maid, his bank, his cook, and he didn't seem to notice. The dam broke one rainy Saturday in March 2024. I'd pulled an all-nighter to finish a client presentation, my brain foggy from stress and caffeine. When I got home, the apartment was a war zone. Dirty plates crusted with pizza sauce, empty chip bags on the counter, laundry spilling from the hamper, and recycling bins overflowing with cans and cardboard. I stood in the doorway, my laptop bag slipping from my shoulder, fury rising like bile. I spent hours cleaning, scrubbing and folding, hoping Ethan would walk in and see my effort. When he finally did, soaked from the rain, he gave me a quick kiss, muttered about a shitty day, and flopped onto the couch, cracking open a beer. No glance at the sparkling counters. No word about the fresh laundry stacked on his dresser. Just the flicker of the TV and his contented sigh. I couldn't hold it in. Ethan, do you even see what I've been doing here? My voice trembled, tears pricking my eyes. He looked up, brow furrowed. What's wrong? Mia, you okay? The words poured out, raw and jagged. I'm not your maid. I cook, clean, do your laundry, pay most of the rent. And all I ask is for you to take out the recycling. One thing, and you can't even do that. He blinked, as if I'd accused him of stealing. I forgot. Okay, I'm beat after work. You know how hard my job is. And mine isn't. I snapped. I work late too. Ethan, I'm up till midnight on deadlines. But I still come home and take care of everything. What do you do besides sit there with a beer? He stood, defensive, his voice rising. I never asked you to do all that. My mom did the same for my dad. It's not a big deal. You're blowing this out of proportion. His words hit like a slap. My mom, my dad. The comparison burned, not just because it diminished me, but because it exposed what I'd been too blind to see. Ethan didn't respect me. He saw me as a means to an end, someone to carry his burdens while he coasted. I took a shaky breath, steadying myself. I'm not your mother. Ethan, we're equals. From now on, you cook your own food, do your own laundry, and take out your own trash. And you're paying 50% of the rent. Or you're out. His jaw dropped, eyes wide with shock. Where's this coming from? You know I can't afford that. Then figure it out, I said, turning away. My heart pounded. But for the first time, I felt powerful. I'd set a boundary. And I wasn't backing down. Back at the reunion, I watched Ethan toss a cornhole bag, his laugh carrying across the yard. My cousin Ryan, oblivious to the tension, slapped his shoulder. Their friendship a painful reminder of how entangled Ethan still was in my life. My mom approached, her floral dress fluttering, her smile tight. Mia, you're awfully quiet. Everything okay? I forced a nod, just taking it all in. She glanced at Ethan, her lips pursing. She'd never liked him, always saying he leaned too hard on me. You don't have to stay. You know, if it's too much, I'm fine. I lied, sipping my tea. But I wasn't. Seeing Ethan stirred up memories I'd buried his promises, his excuses, the way I'd let him dim my light. I wasn't that Mia anymore. But his presence made me question how far I'd really come. As the afternoon wore on, Ethan caught my eye, his grin faltering. He excused himself from Ryan and walked toward me, his boots crunching on the grass. My pulse quickened. But I stood my ground, refusing to flinch. Whatever he wanted, I was ready, or so I told myself. The fluorescent lights of my downtown Chicago apartment buzzed faintly as I sat at the kitchen counter. staring at a half-eaten plate of pasta. It was 9 p.m., and the city outside hummed with life-honking cabs, distant laughter from rooftop bars, but inside, the silence was deafening. Ethan Marshall, my boyfriend of 3 years, was late again. His construction boots were missing from the entryway, his lunchbox absent from the fridge. I knew he'd be home soon, collapsing onto the couch with a beer, oblivious to the dishes I'd washed or the laundry I'd folded. But tonight felt different. After our blowout at the Carter family reunion a month ago, where I'd finally set boundaries, nothing had been the same. That day in Evanston, under the weight of my family's watchful eyes, I'd laid it all bare. I'd told Ethan I was done being his maid, his bank, his doormat. You cook your own food, do your own laundry, take out your own trash, I'd said, my voice steady despite the tears. And you're paying 50% of the rent. Or you're out. His shock had been palpable, his protests weak. I'd walked away, heart pounding, feeling like I'd reclaimed a piece of myself. But living with that decision was harder than I'd expected. For the first week, I stuck to my guns. I washed only my dishes, leaving Ethan's crusted plates in the sink. I did my laundry, letting his work shirts pile up in the hamper. I paid exactly half the rent to our landlord, a no-nonsense woman named Mrs. Patel, and told her Ethan would cover the rest. He grumbled, but he paid, scraping together the money from his paycheck, the recycling bins, though still untouched. I'd stopped taking them out, and they overflowed by the door, a silent testament to his refusal to change. Ethan tried to wear me down. You're being unfair, Mia, he'd say, his voice dripping with self-pity. A good girlfriend would support me. My job's killing me, you know that? I'd nod, unmoved, and go about my day. My job as a junior marketing analyst wasn't easy either. Late nights, crafting ad campaigns, client calls that ran over, and a boss who didn't care where I worked as long as I hit my targets. Yet I still came home, cooked, and kept my side of the apartment spotless. Ethan's excuses didn't hold water anymore. The shift in our dynamic was jarring. Where we'd once shared laughter over takeout or cuddled during movie nights, now we were strangers sharing a lease. He'd eat cereal from a dirty bowl, leaving crumbs on the counter. He'd iron his shirts at the last minute, cursing when he couldn't find a clean one. I watched, detached, refusing to step in. It was liberating but lonely. I missed the Ethan I'd fallen for, the one who'd read poetry with me in the bookstore, who'd promised we'd build a life together. That Ethan was gone, replaced by someone who saw my kindness as weakness. Then came the bombshell. One evening, as I sorted through a stack of mail, I found a letter addressed to my mother, Diane, forwarded to my apartment by mistake. It was from a local credit union, confirming a $5,000 loan repayment. My stomach dropped. My mom didn't take out loans. She and Dad were frugal. Their mortgage paid off years ago. I called her, my hands shaking. Mia, I didn't want you to know, she said, her voice tight. Ethan came to me last year, said he was behind on his student loans. He begged for help, swore he'd pay me back. I lent him the money because, well, I thought you two were serious. I felt like I'd been punched. Why didn't you tell me? He asked me not to. Said it'd embarrass him. I figured you'd work it out. I hung up, fury coursing through me. Ethan hadn't just used me, he'd gone behind my back, manipulating my family. When he got home that night, I was waiting, the letter in my hand. Care to explain this? I asked, holding it up. His face paled. Mia, you borrowed money from my mom without telling me. What the hell? Ethan. He stammered. I was desperate. My loans were crushing me. I didn't want you to think less of me. Think less of you. I laughed bitterly. I paid 70% of the rent, cooked, cleaned, and you still went to my family for handouts. What else are you hiding? He looked away, and that silence said everything. I didn't trust him anymore. From that moment, I doubled down on my boundaries. I stopped cooking for him entirely. Eating takeout or salads, I prepped for myself. I moved my belongings to one side of the apartment, creating an invisible line. Ethan noticed, his frustration growing. He'd slam cabinets, mutter about how cold I'd become. I didn't care. I was done. By late August, our relationship was a ghost. We barely spoke, passing each other like roommates with a grudge. Then, one night, everything unraveled. I was asleep, exhausted from a late deadline, when Ethan stumbled in at 2 a.m. Reeking of whiskey, he shook me awake. His voice slurred. Mia, we need to talk. I sat up, groggy, my patience thin. It's the middle of the night. Can this wait? No. He insisted, swaying. It's important. I sighed, rubbing my eyes. Fine. What? He plopped onto the edge of the bed, his words tumbling out. I met someone. At work. Her name's Olivia Bennett. She's different. Not like you. I blinked. Processing. Olivia Bennett. I'd heard the name whispered at one of Ethan's work events I'd attended months ago. She was 21, the daughter of a real estate tycoon, working as a consultant at Ethan's firm to appease her father's work ethic lectures. I'd seen her once, all sharp cheekbones and designer heels, her laugh cutting through the room. She's a real woman, Ethan continued, oblivious to my silence. She doesn't care about some big career. She wants a family, a home, not this. He gestured vaguely at our apartment. At me. His words should have hurt, but they didn't. I felt nothing, not jealousy, not betrayal, just clarity. Our relationship had been dying for months, and this was the final nail. I'm happy for you, I said, my voice calm. We should break up. You can move out. Ethan's eyes widened, his drunken bravado faltering. What? You're not jealous? I smiled faintly. No, I'm glad you found someone. But you're out by the end of the month. Sleep on the couch tonight. He stood, swaying, his face twisting with anger. You think you're hot shit now, don't you? Because of your promotion. Olivia's got a mansion. Mia, a trust fund. You're nothing compared to her. I didn't flinch. Good. Be with her. But you're gone by September. He stormed out, slamming the bedroom door. I lay back, staring at the ceiling, a strange relief washing over me. I wasn't sad. I was free. But freedom came with a sting. The next morning, Ethan was sullen, packing his things in silence. I went to work, focusing on my campaigns. But my mom's loan gnawed at me. I texted her, asking if Ethan had repaid any of it. Her reply was a punch. Not a cent. That night, I confronted him again. You owe my mom $5,000. When are you paying her back? He shrugged, tossing clothes into a duffel bag. I'll get to it. Relax. Relax. I snapped. You lied to me. Used my family. And now you're blowing it off. Pay her, Ethan, or I'll make sure everyone knows what you did. His eyes narrowed, but he said nothing. Over the next week, he moved out in pieces, his belongings disappearing until the apartment felt like mine again. On his last day, I came home to find him and Olivia in my living room, her perched on my couch like a queen, her designer purse slung over the armrest. Ethan smirked, his arm around her, just showing Olivia where I've been stuck these past years. I swallowed my rage, forcing a smile. Nice to meet you. Olivia. She barely glanced at me, her eyes cold, her voice dripping with disdain. Charming place. So quaint. I excused myself to the kitchen, my hands shaking as I chopped vegetables for dinner. Olivia followed, leaning against the counter, watching me. "You're so domestic," she said, her tone mocking. "Ethan said you love playing house." I ignored her, focusing on my knife work, but her presence was suffocating. When I retreated to my room to eat, I overheard them in the living room, their voices carrying through the thin walls. "She's so boring," Olivia said, laughing. "Why'd you even date her?" Ethan chuckled, his voice low. "She was easy. Paid for everything rent. Dates. Even my mom's bills once. Saved me a ton." My heart stopped. I'd known he'd taken advantage of me, but hearing it laid bare his casual cruelty. His calculated use of my love shattered something inside me. I sat on my bed, tears streaming down my face, but I didn't make a sound. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction. That night, as they left, I vowed to never let Ethan Marshall hurt me again. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Not yet. The Chicago skyline glittered through my apartment window, a mosaic of steel and glass reflecting the last rays of an April sunset. I, Mia Carter, sat cross-legged on my couch, a glass of Pinot Grigio in hand, scrolling through emails on my laptop. At 24, I'd carved out a life I was proud of, a junior marketing analyst job that paid the bills, a downtown apartment I'd made my own, and a newfound sense of independence since kicking my ex-boyfriend, Ethan Marshall, out 8 months ago. The scars of our relationship lingered, but I'd spent the winter rebuilding, scrubbing every trace of him from my space and my heart, or so I thought. My phone buzzed on the coffee table, pulling me from my thoughts. It was a text from my older sister, Emily, 28. A high school teacher who lived in Oak Park with her husband and toddler. "Dinner at Mom's this Sunday. You coming?" I sighed, setting my wine down. Emily and I hadn't been close since I moved in with Ethan. She'd warned me about him early on, calling him a leech who'd drag me down. I'd brushed her off, too in love to listen, and our fights had left a rift. Now, with Ethan gone, I felt the weight of her. "I told you so in every conversation." I typed back, "Maybe. Work's crazy." It wasn't a lie, but it was an excuse. Family dinners meant facing Mom's questions about my love life and Emily's smug glances. I wasn't ready. I turned back to my laptop, but a notification caught my eye, a new email from an unfamiliar address. The subject line read, "You're invited." Curious, I opened it, expecting a work event or a friend's baby shower. Instead, my stomach dropped. It was a wedding invitation, elegant and digital, with gold script announcing the union of Ethan Marshall and Olivia Bennett. Set for June 2025 at a lavish estate in Lake Forest. My hands trembled as I clicked the attachment, a PDF loading with photos of Ethan and Olivia, him in a tailored suit, her in a silk dress, both beaming against a backdrop of manicured gardens. Tucked into the email was a personal note from Ethan. "Mia, I want you to see the life I'm building with Olivia. You'll never touch this kind of success. Come, bring a +1 if you dare." Rage surged through me, hot and sharp. This wasn't a gesture of goodwill, it was a taunt, a calculated jab to rub his newfound wealth in my face. Olivia, the 21-year-old heiress he'd left me for, was his ticket to a life he'd always chased. Her father's real estate empire, her trust fund, her mansion. They were everything Ethan had resented me for not having. I slammed my laptop shut, pacing the apartment, my bare feet cold against the hardwood. He thought he could humiliate me, parade his upgrade while I shrank into the background. He was wrong. I poured another glass of wine, my mind racing. Ethan's note was a challenge, and I wasn't about to let him win. I needed a plan, something to flip the script and make him regret inviting me. Opening my laptop again, I dove into Olivia's social media. Her profile's a curated gallery of luxury yacht trips, designer gowns, and charity galas, but buried in her older posts, I found what I was looking for. Photos with Ryan Carter. My cousin, Ryan, 25, was a law student at Northwestern, charming and quick-witted, with a smile that could disarm anyone. He and Olivia had dated through college, their relationship a whirlwind of campus parties and summer road trips. Their breakup 2 years ago had been ugly. Olivia had cheated, and Ryan had cut her off, refusing her pleas to stay friends. I remembered Ryan's stories about Olivia, how her infidelity had gutted him. He'd moved on, or so he claimed, but there was still a flicker of pain when her name came up. An idea formed, bold and petty. What if I brought Ryan as my plus one? The look on Ethan's face, seeing Olivia's ex at his wedding, would be priceless. And Olivia, she'd unravel, her perfect day tainted by a ghost from her past. I hesitated, knowing it was a gamble, but the sting of Ethan's note pushed me forward. I texted Ryan, "Hey, you free for coffee tomorrow? Got a crazy idea." The next morning, I met Ryan at a cafe in Logan Square. Its exposed brick walls and indie playlist, a stark contrast to the storm in my head. Ryan arrived in a navy sweater, his dark hair tousled, his grin easy but curious. "What's this about, Mia?" he asked, stirring sugar into his latte. "You look like you're plotting a heist." I laughed, nerves bubbling. Close. Ethan invited me to his wedding, to Olivia, with a note basically saying I'm a loser who'll never match their life. Ryan's jaw tightened. What a prick. Why'd he even invite you? To gloat, I said, sliding my phone across the table to show him the email. He thinks he's untouchable now, marrying into money. I want to show up with you as my plus one. Shake things up. Ryan's eyes widened, then narrowed as he read Ethan's note. "You're evil," he said, a grin spreading. "I'm in." Olivia cheated on me with some rich guy while we were still together. I heard later it was Ethan. Screwing with their day sounds therapeutic. We spent an hour plotting, bonding over our shared betrayal. Ryan revealed more about Olivia, how her need for validation drove her to chase older, wealthier men, how she'd flaunted her father's connections to mask her insecurities. I told him about Ethan's manipulation, from the rent I'd covered to the $5,000 he'd borrowed from my mom, still unpaid. Ryan shook his head. "He's a user. Mia always was. I should have warned you when you started dating him." "You're not the only one," I muttered, thinking of Emily. "My sister tried, and I shut her out. Now she's all, 'I told you so.'" Ryan leaned back, sipping his latte. "Family's messy like that. But you're doing all right. Mia, this wedding, it's your victory lap." His words stuck with me as I drove to my mom's house that Sunday for dinner. The Evanston bungalow smelled of roasted chicken and rosemary. My dad's jazz records playing softly. Mom, 55, bustled in the kitchen, her apron dusted with flour. Dad, 58, read the paper at the table, humming off-key. Emily was there with her husband, Tom, and their 2-year-old, Lily, who toddled around, clutching a stuffed bunny. The scene was warm, familiar, but tension simmered beneath it. Emily cornered me as I helped set the table. "You've been dodging us," she said, her brown eyes sharp. "What's going on?" Still recovering from Ethan. I bristled. "I'm fine. Work's good. Life's good. Can we not do this? She crossed her arms. You didn't listen when I said he was trouble. I watched you burn yourself out for him. Mia, I'm your sister, I care. Then stop acting like you're perfect. I snapped. You don't get to lecture me now that it's over. Mom overheard. Stepping in. Girls, enough. We're family. Act like it. Dinner was strained. Lily's chatter the only relief. As I drove home, Emily's words gnawed at me. She'd been right about Ethan, but her judgment stung. I wanted to prove I'd moved on, not just to her, but to myself. Ethan's wedding was my chance. Back in my apartment, I RSVP'd to the wedding. Checking the +1 box, I imagined Ethan's smug face, Olivia's poised perfection, and the chaos Ryan's presence would unleash. It was petty, but it felt right. Ethan had used me, humiliated me, and now he'd invited me to his victory parade. I wasn't going to let him have the last word. The game was on, and I was ready to play. The Lake Forest estate was a vision of opulence, its sprawling lawns dotted with white roses and twinkling fairy lights. Crystal chandeliers gleamed in the grand ballroom, where a string quartet played softly, their notes mingling with the clink of champagne flutes. Mia Carter, 24, stood near the edge of the reception, my emerald green dress hugging my frame, a glass of sparkling water in hand. Beside me was my cousin Ryan, 25, sharp in a tailored navy suit, his easy grin masking the storm we both knew was coming. Today was Ethan Marshall's wedding to Olivia Bennett, the heiress who'd replaced me in his life. His invitation, laced with a taunting note, had been a challenge. Come see the life I'm building with Olivia. You'll never touch this. I'd RSVP'd with a +1. Ryan, Olivia's ex, determined to turn Ethan's gloating into his downfall. The ceremony had been flawless, a spectacle of wealth and tradition. Olivia, 21, floated down the aisle in a floor-length gown of ivory lace, her blonde curls cascading under a diamond-encrusted veil. Ethan, 32, stood at the altar, his sandy hair slicked back, his black tuxedo impeccable. His eyes had widened when he spotted me and Ryan in the pews, a flicker of panic crossing his face before he masked it with a smirk. Ryan, ever the charmer, had leaned over and whispered, "He's sweating already." I'd stifled a laugh, but my heart raced. This was no ordinary wedding, it was a chess game, and I'd just moved my queen. As the reception began, guests mingled under a canopy of silk drapes, their laughter echoing off marble floors. Ryan and I found our table, strategically placed near the back, giving us a clear view of the head table where Ethan and Olivia would sit. I scanned the room, noting Olivia's parents, her father, Richard Bennett, a stern man in a bespoke suit, and her mother, Evelyn, dripping in pearls. They exuded old money, their smiles polite but guarded. I wondered what they thought of Ethan, the construction foreman who'd somehow won their daughter's heart, or her bank account. Ethan approached us before the bride's entrance, his stride too casual, his smile too tight. "Mia," he said, voice low, "didn't expect you to actually show." And with him, his eyes flicked to Ryan, who leaned back in his chair, unfazed. I tilted my head, mirroring his smile. "You invited me." "Ethan, I'm just here to celebrate your big day." Ryan extended a hand, his tone dripping with charm. "Good to see you." "Man, congrats." Ethan ignored the handshake, his jaw twitching. "What's this about?" "Mia, you trying to start something?" "Start something." I raised an eyebrow. "I'm just honoring your invitation. You wanted me to see your grand life." Right?" His face reddened, but before he could respond, the MC announced the bride's entrance. Guests rose, clapping as Olivia appeared in a sleek, off-shoulder reception dress, her father at her side. She glided toward the head table, her smile radiant until her eyes landed on Ryan. She froze mid-step, her face paling. Richard Bennett steadied her, murmuring something, but Olivia's gaze darted between Ryan and me, confusion morphing into something sharper. Anger. Fear. I couldn't tell. She recovered quickly, taking her seat beside Ethan. But the damage was done. Ryan leaned toward me, whispering, "She's rattled. Game on." I nodded, sipping my water, my pulse steady. I'd come to unsettle them, and it was working. The reception unfolded with toasts and dances, but tension simmered. Olivia kept glancing our way, her smile faltering each time. Ethan, too, seemed distracted, his hand gripping his wineglass too tightly. During the first dance, as they swayed to a slow ballad, Olivia's eyes locked on Ryan, who was casually chatting with a guest. I watched, a mix of satisfaction and unease stirring in my chest. This was what I'd wanted to disrupt their perfect day, but the intensity of Olivia's reaction was more than I'd expected. Halfway through the evening, Ethan made his move. As I stood near the dessert table, debating between a macaron and a mini tart, he cornered me, his voice low but venomous. "You think you're clever. Bringing him here." He gestured toward Ryan, who was now at the bar, laughing with my cousin Emily, who'd surprised me by attending. "You're pathetic, Mia. Trying to ruin my wedding because you're jealous." The accusations stung, but I held my ground, my voice calm. "Jealous? Of what?" "Ethan, you used me for years, my money, my time, even my mom's savings. You don't get to play victim." His eyes flashed, and he stepped closer, his voice rising. "You were nothing without me. Olivia's a real woman, not some wannabe career girl who thinks she's hot shit." Guests nearby turned, their murmurs growing. Emily, catching the scene, started toward us, but I raised a hand to stop her. I wasn't backing down. "You invited me to gloat," I said, loud enough for others to hear. "You wanted to show off your grand life. Well, I'm here, and I brought a friend. Deal with it." Ethan's face twisted, and for a moment, I thought he might grab me, but Richard Bennett appeared, his presence commanding. "Is there a problem?" he asked, his tone icy. Ethan stepped back, forcing a smile. "No, sir. Just catching up with an old friend." Richard's eyes narrowed, but he nodded, guiding Ethan away. Emily reached me, her expression a mix of worry and pride. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I said, exhaling. "Thanks for being here." She squeezed my arm. "I've got your back. Always." The confrontation left me shaken, but I refused to leave. I rejoined Ryan, who'd missed the drama but sensed my tension. "You good?" he asked. I nodded, forcing a smile. "Let's just enjoy the party." But the party didn't last. An hour later, Olivia was nowhere to be seen. She'd slipped away after a brief exchange with Ryan, who'd asked to speak privately to clear the air. I'd watched them step outside, Olivia's face a mask of conflicting emotions. Now, as dessert was served, guests began to whisper. Richard and Evelyn Bennett exchanged worried glances, and a bridesmaid was sent to check on the bride. The bridesmaid returned, her face ashen, clutching a folded note. She handed it to Richard, who read it silently, his jaw tightening. He passed it to Evelyn, who gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. The MC, sensing the shift, cut the music, and Richard took the microphone, his voice strained but composed. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "I regret to inform you that Olivia has left the reception. She's safe, but she won't be returning tonight." We apologize for the disruption and ask for your understanding. Murmurs erupted. Guests exchanging shocked glances. The bridesmaid, unable to contain herself, blurted out. She ran off with her ex. There's a note. She held it up, her voice trembling as she read. I'm sorry, Ethan. Seeing Ryan made me realize I still love him. I can't go through with this. Forgive me. The room fell silent, the weight of the words sinking in. Ethan stood at the head table, his face a mask of disbelief, his hands clenched into fists. Guests stared, some whispering, others gathering their things to leave. Evelyn Bennett sobbed quietly, her husband's arm around her, his expression a mix of fury and humiliation. I sat frozen, Ryan beside me, his own shock mirroring mine. I'd wanted to unsettle them, to make Ethan regret his cruelty. But this was chaos beyond my plan. Ethan's eyes found mine across the room, burning with rage. He started toward me, but Emily stepped in his path, her voice low but firm. Don't, Ethan. Not here. He hesitated, then turned away. His shoulders slumped. The Bennetts ushered guests out, their apologies hollow. Ryan touched my arm. Mia. I didn't expect. I just talked to her. She said she never stopped loving me. I nodded, my throat tight. I know. It's not your fault. But as we left the estate, the night air cool against my skin, a twinge of guilt crept in. I'd wanted Ethan to feel the sting of his own arrogance. But Olivia's choice had shattered more than just his pride. The Bennetts' devastation, Ethan's humiliation, it was all part of the fallout. I'd played my move, and the board had flipped. Now, I had to face what came next. The hum of my apartment's air conditioner was the only sound in the pre-dawn quiet. The Chicago skyline a faint glow beyond my window. It was 3 days after Ethan Marshall's disastrous wedding to Olivia Bennett, a spectacle that had imploded when Olivia fled with my cousin Ryan, her ex, leaving Ethan humiliated and her wealthy family in chaos. Mia Carter, 24, sat on my couch, wrapped in a fleece blanket, staring at the coffee table where my phone buzzed incessantly. Ethan's name flashed on the screen, missed calls, voicemails, texts, all unanswered. His desperation was palpable, but I felt no urge to engage. The wedding had been my checkmate, a response to his cruel invitation to see the life I'd never touch. Yet, as the adrenaline faded, a knot of guilt tightened in my chest. I'd wanted to unsettle him, not unravel an entire family's future. I sipped lukewarm tea, replaying the wedding's fallout. Olivia's note, read aloud by a trembling bridesmaid, had stunned the guests. I'm sorry, Ethan. Seeing Ryan made me realize I still love him. I can't go through with this. Her parents, Richard and Evelyn Bennett, had stood frozen, their polished facade crumbling. Ethan's rage had burned through the room, his eyes locking on me as if I'd orchestrated every word. I hadn't, not exactly. Bringing Ryan was meant to rattle Ethan and Olivia, to mirror the humiliation they'd inflicted when they mocked me in my own home. But Olivia's decision to run was her own, and the devastation it left behind was more than I'd bargained for. My phone buzzed again, a voicemail notification. Against my better judgment, I played it. Ethan's voice was slurred, raw with anger. Mia, you ruined my life. You and that bastard Ryan. You think you're so smart. You're nothing. Call me back, or I swear. The message cut off, and I deleted it, my hands shaking. His words stung, not because they were true, but because they echoed the Ethan I'd loved, the one who'd used my kindness, my money, even my family. To prop himself up, I blocked his number. But the unease lingered. This wasn't over. The next morning, I dragged myself to work. My marketing campaigns a blur of charts and deadlines. My coworker, Sarah, noticed my distraction. "You okay?" "Mia," she asked, handing me a coffee. "You look like you haven't slept." I forced a smile. "Rough week." "I'll be fine." But I wasn't. That evening, as I unlocked my apartment door, my mom called, her voice tense. "Mia, Ethan's been texting me. He says he needs to talk something about the loan I gave him last year." I didn't reply. But what's going on? My blood ran cold. The $5,000 Ethan had borrowed from my mom, Diane. Behind my back, a betrayal I'd uncovered months ago remained unpaid. Now he was reaching out to her again. "Mom, don't respond," I said, my voice sharp. "He's desperate." The wedding fell apart. "And he's lashing out." "Fell apart?" she asked, alarmed. "What happened?" I hesitated, then told her everything: Ethan's taunting invitation, my decision to bring Ryan, Olivia's dramatic exit. Mom listened, her silence heavy. When I finished, she sighed. "Mia, I'm proud of you for standing up to him. But it's messy. Be careful. He's not stable." Her warning echoed as I hung up, a chill settling over me. Ethan's audacity to contact my mom, likely fishing for more money, was a new low. I texted my sister, Emily, who'd been at the wedding and stepped in when Ethan confronted me. "Ethan's texting Mom about the loan. Can we talk?" Emily replied instantly. "Come over tomorrow. Bring wine." The next day, I drove to Emily's house in Oak Park, a cozy two-story with toys scattered across the lawn. Emily, 28, greeted me at the door, her toddler, Lily, clinging to her leg. Her husband, Tom, was at a work event, leaving us to talk. We settled in the living room, Lily napping upstairs, a bottle of Merlot between us. Emily's eyes, so like mine but sharper, studied me. "So, Ethan's harassing Mom now?" she asked. "Pouring wine." I nodded, recounting Mom's call. "He's got no shame. After everything, using me, lying about the loan, cheating with Olivia, he thinks he can still pull strings." Emily leaned back, swirling her glass. "I told you he was a leech. Mia, 3 years ago, when you moved in with him, I said he'd bleed you dry. You didn't listen." Her words stung, reopening old wounds. "I know," I said, my voice tight. "I was in love. I thought he'd change. Can we not do this?" She softened, setting her glass down. "I'm not trying to rub it in. I was scared for you. Watching you burn out. Paying his way. Cleaning up after him, it killed me. You're my little sister. I wanted to shake you." I looked away, tears pricking my eyes. "I messed up, but I'm not that person anymore." The wedding, it was my way of taking back control. Emily reached for my hand. "I saw that. When you stood up to him at the reception, I was proud. But this thing with Ryan and Olivia, it's bigger than you planned, isn't it?" I nodded, the guilt surfacing. "I didn't mean for it to go that far. I just wanted Ethan to feel what I felt. Now he's falling apart, and I feel responsible." "You're not," she said firmly. "Olivia made her choice. Ethan built his house of cards. You just flicked it." Her words steadied me, and for the first time in years, I felt a bridge forming between us. "Thanks, Em," I said, squeezing her hand. "I'm sorry I shut you out before." She smiled, a rare softness in her eyes. "We're good. Just don't make me chase you down again." Our talk was cut short by a pounding at my apartment door the next night. I'd just gotten home, my keys still in hand, when Ethan's voice boomed through the wood. "Mia, open the damn door. We need to talk." My heart raced. Mom's warning flashing in my mind. I cracked the door, keeping the chain on, his face red with fury. "You're not coming in," I said, my voice steady. "Say what you want and leave. You ruined my life," he shouted, slamming a fist against the frame. "Olivia was my future, and you brought that asshole Ryan to screw it up. Why, Mia? Because you're jealous." I laughed, cold and sharp. "Jealous? You used me for years, Ethan. My money, my time, my mom's savings. I heard you and Olivia that night in my apartment, laughing about how easy I was. You invited me to your wedding to gloat, and I showed up. That's it." His eyes widened, shock flickering. "You heard that?" "Every word," I said. "You're not the victim here. Olivia chose Ryan. Blame her. Or better yet, look in the mirror." He lunged forward, rattling the door. But I held firm. "Get out, or I'm calling the police." He scoffed. But his bravado crumbled. "You wouldn't dare." I pulled out my phone, dialing 911 and holding it up. "Try me." He backed off, muttering curses, and disappeared down the hall. I shut the door, my hands trembling, and sank to the floor. The next day, I ordered a security camera and scheduled a locksmith. Ethan wasn't getting near me again. A week later, Ryan called, his voice hesitant. "Mia, I owe you an explanation. Olivia and we're together. When we talked at the wedding, she broke down, said she never stopped loving me. I didn't plan this, but it happened." I sighed, the guilt easing slightly. "I'm glad you're happy. Ryan, just be careful. Olivia's got her own baggage." "I know," he said. "Thanks for bringing me." It gave us closure, one way or another. As I hung up, I felt a weight lift. Ethan's world had collapsed, but it wasn't my fault. He'd built his life on lies, and I'd simply shone a light on them. With Emily's support and a new lock on my door, I was ready to move forward, leaving Ethan's chaos behind. The late summer sun cast a golden haze over my childhood home in Evanston, its backyard alive with the familiar chaos of the Carter family reunion. Laughter rang out as my cousins tossed a frisbee, kids darted through sprinklers, and the smoky scent of Dad's ribs on the grill filled the air. Mia Carter, 24, stood on the porch, a glass of lemonade in hand, my sundress fluttering in the breeze. It was a year since the last reunion, where my confrontation with Ethan Marshall, my ex-boyfriend, had set off a chain of events that changed me. The memory of his wedding to Olivia Bennett, its spectacular collapse when she fled with my cousin Ryan, still lingered. But today, it felt distant, like a storm that had passed. I wasn't the Mia who'd let Ethan dim her light. I was stronger, freer, and, for the first time in years, at peace. The past 2 months had been a whirlwind. After Ethan's unhinged confrontation at my apartment door, where I'd threatened to call the police, I'd taken every step to protect myself. A new security camera blinked above my downtown Chicago apartment, its red light a quiet reassurance. I'd changed the locks, blocked Ethan's number, and warned my landlord about him. His attempt to manipulate my mom, Diane, by texting her about the unpaid $5,000 loan had been the final straw. I'd sat Mom down, insisting she block him too. "He's not your responsibility, Mom." I'd said. "He never was." She'd nodded, her eyes sad but resolute, and promised to let it go. The loan remained unpaid, a bitter reminder of Ethan's betrayal. But I refused to let it define me. Work had become my anchor. My role as a junior marketing analyst had always been demanding. But in July, I'd pitched a bold idea to my boss, a campaign for a local nonprofit, blending digital ads with community events to boost their outreach. To my surprise, she greenlit it, giving me a small team and a budget. The project consumed my days, meetings with designers, late nights tweaking slogans, and visits to community centers to plan events. It was exhausting but exhilarating, a chance to prove myself beyond the cubicles. My team nicknamed me the Visionary, a title that made me blush but secretly thrilled me. For the first time, I felt like my career wasn't just a job, it was a calling. Family, too, had shifted. My sister, Emily, and I had mended our rift after years of tension. Her warnings about Ethan, once a source of resentment, now felt like proof of her love. At her Oak Park home, over wine and toddler toys, we'd laid our cards bare. "I was scared for you," she'd said, and I'd apologized for shutting her out. Since then, we'd texted daily, shared coffee dates, and even planned a girls' trip for the fall. Emily's presence at Ethan's wedding, stepping in when he confronted me, had been a turning point. She wasn't just my sister, she was my ally. Today's reunion was a chance to celebrate that. Mom, 55, bustled around the picnic tables, her floral apron dusted with flour from her famous cornbread. Dad, 58, manned the grill, his jazz playlist blaring from a portable speaker. Emily was there with her husband, Tom, and their daughter, Lily, who toddled toward me, her pigtails bouncing. "Aunt Mia," she squealed, hugging my legs. I scooped her up, spinning her until she giggled, her joy infectious. Emily watched, smiling. "You're good with her," she said. "Ever think about kids?" I laughed, setting Lily down. "Maybe someday. Right now, I'm happy being the cool aunt." Mom joined us, wiping her hands on her apron. "You seem different, Mia," she said, her eyes soft, lighter, like you've let something go. I nodded, the weight of her words settling. "I have." The conversation paused as Ryan arrived, his law school backpack slung over one shoulder. He'd been scarce since the wedding, navigating his renewed relationship with Olivia. I'd spoken to him once. When he explained their impulsive reunion, she broke down at the wedding. He'd said she never stopped loving me. "It's messy, but we're figuring it out." I'd wished him luck, keeping my distance. Their drama wasn't mine to carry. Ryan hugged me, his grin sheepish. "You surviving the family circus?" "Barely," I teased. "You," he shrugged. "Olivia and I are good. Her parents are still pissed, but they're coming around. Thanks for, shaking things up." I raised an eyebrow. "I didn't plan for a runaway bride." "I know," he said, laughing. "But it worked out." As the afternoon unfolded, I helped Mom serve cornbread, traded stories with cousins, and danced with Lily to Dad's jazz. The reunion was louder, messier, than last year's, but it felt right. Family wasn't perfect. It was arguments and grudges, love and forgiveness, all tangled together. I'd learned to set boundaries, not just with Ethan, but with everyone, and in doing so, I'd found my place among them. That evening, as the sun dipped low, I slipped inside to grab more napkins from the kitchen. On the counter, tucked among Mom's mail, was an envelope with my name in Ethan's handwriting. My stomach twisted. I hadn't heard from him since the doorstep incident, and I'd assumed he'd vanished into his own ruin. With trembling hands, I opened it, expecting venom. Instead, it was an apology. "Mia," it read, "I've had time to think, and I'm sorry. I used you, lied to you, and hurt you. I was desperate, chasing a life I thought I needed. The wedding was my mistake, not yours. I'm trying to be better. I hope you're happy." I stood frozen, the words blurring. Part of me wanted to believe him, to think he'd learned something, But another part, the part that remembered his manipulation, his cruelty knew better. Ethan's apologies were always laced with self-interest. I carried the letter to the backyard, where a bonfire crackled, cousins roasting marshmallows. Without a word, I tossed it into the flames, watching the paper curl and blacken. Emily, sitting nearby, caught my eye. "What was that?" she asked. "Nothing worth keeping," I said, my voice steady. She nodded, understanding, and handed me a marshmallow stick. "Good choice." Later, as the fire died down, Mom pulled me aside. "I saw the letter," she said softly. "You didn't read it to me, but I can guess who it was from. You okay?" I leaned against her, the scent of her lavender perfume grounding me. "Yeah, Mom, I'm more than okay. I'm free." She hugged me, her embrace warm and fierce. "You've always been strong, Mia. I'm just glad you see it now." The reunion ended with hugs and promises to meet again. Lily asleep in Emily's arms, Dad's ribs reduced to bones. As I drove back to Chicago, the city lights welcoming me home, I reflected on the year. Ethan's betrayal had broken me, but it had also rebuilt me. I'd learned my worth, not through his validation, but through my own choices, setting boundaries, chasing my career, mending my family. The nonprofit campaign was launching next month, and I'd already been tapped for a promotion. My apartment, once a battleground, was now a sanctuary, filled with plants and art I'd chosen. I parked, climbed the stairs, and stepped inside, the security camera's light blinking. On my coffee table, a notebook held my campaign notes, a reminder of the life I was building. I didn't need Ethan's apologies or Olivia's drama. I had myself, my family, and a future I'd carved with my own hands. As I sank onto the couch, the city humming beyond my window, I smiled. The game was over, and I'd won, not by destroying Ethan, but by becoming the woman he'd never deserved.